Hello and welcome to Consciously Awesome Living here on Soulivity TV. I am Sheila Applegate, your host and spiritual mentor, author, and all around adventurer. So, we've been talking lately about how we are going to remodel our world. We talk about how we're going to find our own brilliance and discover the fullness of who we are, and then how we can affect our world with that. Especially, I've been thinking about how we make these shifts that we want to make in our world for you personally and for the collective as we move out of the pandemic and into a new way of being. And we've got the astrology that we've talked about that's affecting it as well. So, what is it that we want to create? And the thing that I've been thinking about today is about 2 years ago, around this time. That's when we all went into lockdown around the world. If, I'm sure you remember, right? And there was that initial fear and doubt. And then there was this excitement and this peace that came over all of us, this potential, the possibilities. And it was around that time, as everyone went quiet, the planes didn't fly, and people weren't commuting to work or going out. And do you remember what happened, what was going around the news and the social media at that point? Suddenly, we started getting all these stories about how the birds were flocking back to the cities, and they were finding birds that hadn't been in the cities for a long time, variations of birds that weren't normally seen in that area. We had pictures of mountain goats coming down into the villages in Wales, flamingos flocking the Mumbai city in India, and there were lions taking cat naps on the roads in South Africa. It was this magical place, right? This magical sense that we were part of nature again. And I think as humans, we forget that. We don't remember that we're connected to nature. Not connected to nature, we are nature, right? Like, we are a part of this whole ecosystem that creates life on Earth, and we sometimes in society separate ourselves from that, and we forget that we are connected to that. So this magic, when the animals came to play again, we even had gangs of rats fighting in New York City. That one cracks me up because when I think about that, when the people went away, the rats came out, and I remember the stories about how there's actually different groups of rats that were fighting for territory as they spread out. And I just think that in my head, it turns into an anime of the rat version of the West Side Story musical. And I don't know why that hasn't been made yet, but maybe someday it will be. But even with that, it was fun. We remembered, well, I wasn't in New York City, so I may not have found that fun, but still, it was like, wow, nature's coming back. They're alive. This is what happens when we step out of the way a little bit, which we really needed to see, right? Especially in this time when we've got global warming speeding up because of the way humans have disconnected themselves from the reality that this is part of who we are. So, as we remodel our world, would you like to invite animals to be more a part of it? I highly encourage it because for me, I've been playing with the animals all along. I am fortunate enough. I live right near a middle-sized city, but I'm out in the country enough with just enough acreage and enough care and concern to allow for nature to be present. But I've had some really cool experiences with animals that I want to share with you. And this is pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic. Well, are we post-pandemic? It is it's irrelevant to the pandemic. This is just things that I've been thinking about that have happened to me with the animals because I pay attention. And so I'm going to tell you some stories, and then I want to maybe give you some tips that you can use if you are ready to be more in tune with animals. And as I say that, I get a sense that there's some listeners that are like, I don't know if I want animals any closer to me, right? Because they're intimidating to you, possibly to some of us, because they're strangers to us. And in fact, one of Zach's favorite stories is to tell about a time that we had walked in the house, and he says there was the cutest mouse that he had ever seen. He said it should have been a cartoon, and it was a baby mouse on the floor next to where I was standing. And he said, "Don't move." Well, I think I was sitting on a chair, like one of those high up chairs. And he said, "Don't move." And as soon as he said, "Don't move," I jumped up and I almost hit the mouse and stepped on it, because just that knowledge that there could be a creature and a thing like that, a mouse, would make me shriek until I remember that it's a tiny mouse and it's okay. I don't want animals living in my house unless I invited them, but once in a while that happens, right? So as soon as that ego survival instinct takes over, I create a wall with the animals. But once I remember that, or if I don't let it take over, then my energy is open, right? And as soon as that shriek came, then I remembered, oh, it's not a big deal. And then I come down and I could, embrace the animal and help get it outside as well. But if you experience that fear, that's normal and it's okay, because we're programmed for that protective self, that survival self in us to resist. But what we want to do is move past that and listen and be present. And so here's some of the things that have happened to me that I want to tell you about. Um, this is a while ago. Well, I ended up having to care for two baby deers, and one died within 24 hours. It was a summer day. They were tiny, tiny babies, and their mother had been hit by a car, and they were found. There's a business across the street from me, and it was found behind their dumpster. And I don't know why they came over and got me. I don't know why, but um, my partner at the time, my friend at the time, was here, and he also knew about animals. So we took these babies in and we raised them. And we had a dog at the time who played with the deer because they were so little. The one that survived was actually living in our house and walking around like a dog. And we would put it in a cage and um, took it out on a leash until it was old enough for us to take it to a sanctuary. And so the dog, our puppy Sammy, was playing with the deer, and this was normal. Sammy was a puppy, young at that point. So moving on, a couple years later, we were outside, and a mom and some baby deer started playing at the end of our property, and the deers were kind of jumping and running around. Sammy was so excited because to Sammy, that's a friend, right? And so Sammy ran down the yard barking in that I want to play excited bark, and goes towards the deer, and the mama deer turns and stops Sammy and places her hoof right on Sammy, nailing him to the ground to protect her babies. And I was across the yard and I made eye contact with her. And I just, in my picture in my mind, and then directly at her, I said, he didn't mean it. He just wanted to play. And she looked at me, she held it for a while, and then she let Sammy go and chased Sammy up till they were about 2 feet away from me. And she did the same thing. She pinned him down, so that he couldn't move, and she just looked me right in the eye like, "You take care of your baby." And until I was able to acknowledge to her that I would, then she held him there, and when she trusted that I would, she let him up, and then she followed us into the house and stood guard by the door for a while to make sure we wouldn't do it. And I was do anything, to them. I was so impressed by that moment. It was such a profound moment because we were 2 moms watching our little babies, right? Me with my puppy and her with her baby deer, and we had a communication that was so deep and so true and so beautiful and so respectful, and it came from energy and listening to each other in this nonverbal expression. This is something that we can do, all of us can do. That isn't because I have a special gift, it's because I remembered to be one with her. I remembered to have that empathy that we talked about, to know what she was seeing, what she was going through, and to listen. And when we listen, even to wild animals, and we use that energy and communicate non-verbally, I'm always communicating verbally with them, which they don't appreciate. They really prefer, because to them, I guess it's like the same as if we hear a raccoon screeching or a crow crowing. We don't understand their language, right? Um, but they understand the pictures. And this has happened many, many more, not that exact thing, but many more times. We had a bunch of baby bunnies that were born, and we had a garden, and this was a couple years ago, and the baby bunnies just are so free and they love us. And I was walking down the yard one day, and one came running at me like a puppy. I thought it was going to jump in my lap, and I thought that's not a good idea. I was like, oh my gosh, what would I do? But another time it was at our garden, and it it had gotten up and it was nibbling on a piece of the lettuce, and I walk up to it and it didn't move, and I just said to I pictured it not eating the leaves, and I said, "Please eat the clovers next to you. Don't eat from that box." And it just looked at me, and it got right down, and it started rolling on its back in the dirt. So it was so safe and comfortable with me, and yet knew exactly what I was asking it to do because that was mine. And somehow it was able to receive that. And it just brings me so much joy when I communicate with the animals. And that's why I think it reminds me that we're all connected. And I think that why they were posting so many of those pictures of the animals around, why the whole world had this wave of excitement of reconnecting with the animal kingdom is because it's our natural state. And it seems like, why is that important? And you might live in a city and you might be like, well, I don't have that luxury, but you do, because no matter where we are, they will find us. We have that's one of the crows. There are crows in my yard, and I like to feel I communicate with them, but I can't tell which one is which or whatever. But I was at the grocery store a few miles down, and I was outside talking to a friend who I had seen in the grocery store, and all of a sudden a crow landed on the wire, right near us down low, and it was screaming. It was so loud that we couldn't even talk to each other, and the person I was with was like, oh geez, like it was some sort of omen or something. And I got a flash of a donut and realized that she had donuts in her cart. And I was like, "Oh, that bird wants a donut." It felt like, and then I thought, "Oh, it's one of my birds from my yard," because I leave food out for them sometimes. Not donuts, but I did get him a donut after that. But anyway, I turned to him, and again out loud in my heart feeling the love, but in acknowledging him, But in my words, I just said, "Oh, hello. I'm sorry I didn't say hello." And it went silent. It never cawed again. And I did get it a donut next time I went to the grocery store. But anyway, we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, I'm going to give some more tips on if you want to feel that wonder of connecting to the animal kingdom, some of the things that you can do to make that happen.
Soulivity Magazine and Beyond Words Publishing want to remind you about the importance of continuing to follow public health guidelines to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your community. Please continue to wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Please visit these sites for further information about how to stay safe from COVID-19 into the new year. Remember, love protects us.
All right, we're back, and we're talking about communicating with the animals as our natural way of being, just allowing them to be in our lives. I think really it comes down, the biggest part is to genuinely love them. Let your heart open to them. Again, if you haven't had a lot of exposure to animals and in connection in this lifetime and to nature, because some people don't. We have big cities and some people just aren't raised like that. When I was in college, I had a roommate who didn't wasn't raised with animals. And so I had another roommate who did have animals, and we would bring our dog up for visits into the apartment, and we were talking to our dogs and everything. And then midway through the year, my friend Kelly, the roommate who didn't have a lot of experience with animals, she got a fish. And one day she walked out of her room and she goes, "I never understood why you guys talk to your dogs until I got a fish." So you can start with a fish. When you start to connect with animals, you start to feel that interaction and you talk to them because you know that they are talking back. That's why we do that with our pets. We know that while they may learn some language, and certainly pets do. I used to have to spell walk backwards if I wanted to say out loud that it didn't even work, because as soon as the picture of taking my dog for a walk entered my head, he was ready to go and jumping as if I had actually said it. So they certainly know pictures and they know words. Some of them do know words, but for as we're moving out into nature, it really is about pictures. We had a really good conversation about this with the actor Michael Summers from, well, he's in the new Matrix and he's also in Live Sense 8, and he was on one of our, or in Sense8, he was on one of our Live Sense8 podcasts. If you look that up, we went into a pretty deep discussion about his views of communicating with animals. But my idea for you is to trust in it, to believe in it. And what if it's not right? Right? What if that wasn't the crow that wanted my attention on the grocery store? Doesn't really matter, right? Because I feel more connected to crows now just because he responded to me when I acknowledged him. And nobody else in that whole parking lot acknowledged the crow aside from being afraid of it. So we can change the way we are as a humanity, and we can change the way the animal kingdom responds to us simply by those little moments. And I have so many moments like that that I wanted, miracle communication moments with animals. I could go on for hours actually, because it makes me happy and excites me. But let's do a little meditation, because I want you to get that sense of that feeling. And again, this may be something you do all the time. I would love to hear from you. I love animal stories. So if you try these techniques out and you have some luck or experience with it, please leave it in the comments or send me an email at SheilaApplegate.com. And if you don't have experience and you want help with it, also just write so we can give you more suggestions. But the idea is, let's have fun with them together. Okay. So I'm going to give you um, a little quick meditation to know that feeling and know what it's like. There was let's say one more too, because these are different one more story. We had we had to get rid of a groundhog that was eating up the whole garden one summer. And I think it was last summer. And we had, so we got one of those friendly cage traps that they just trap them and then you can move them away. And the first morning Zach went out there, there was one of our bunnies in it, the bunnies in our yard. And they just were just like calm and ready to go. As soon as he opened the door, the bunny just ran out and he was fine. But the next morning, or another morning, Zach came out and there was a raccoon in the cage. And that raccoon was not happy. It was a little raccoon. I mean, they looked bigger than we imagined, but it was a pretty young raccoon. And Zach couldn't get the cage open, and the raccoon was so upset. And they can be dangerous and attack, kind of, right? And it was so frightened and it didn't understand what was going on. And there was nothing I could do to help Zach with the lever. He had to get away from it, and we hadn't really thought about that beforehand. But what I could do is stand nearby and pour love into it and give it visualizations about what was going to happen next and why we were helping it get out, and that that's what we were doing. And it finally calmed down enough as I did that for Zach to open the cage. And then when it got out, it just kind of turned and looked at us and just nodded and then went on. And so these are things that will just change when we shift our attention. And I was scared in that situation too, a little bit, because, here's this trapped animal that could hurt us. But when I could get into that peace and love, then it shifts the animal's perspective. And just think about how powerful we can change the world just every time we interact with the animal kingdom, and how many times that can amplify, and how we could create a world that is in more harmony. So I'm just going to have you close your eyes. And this is going to just be a very gentle, soft visualization, even more than a meditation. So just close your eyes and imagine that waterfall or the faucet that we talked about, just white light pouring down and filling you up. Allow it to fill every cell of your body. And then as it moves through you, feel yourself relaxing, becoming more and more peaceful. And as you sit in that peacefulness, maybe just allow that violet flame. Imagine a beautiful violet flame coming up, gentle flame of light, not heat, just warm, beautiful light moving through you, transmuting and removing any of your fears, helping to calm that ego that just wants to protect you, that survival instinct that puts you on high alert when you're come upon an unexpected animal. Just feel that peace. And as you move deeper and deeper and deeper into the peace, first imagine maybe a domesticated animal, someone that you've known, an animal that you've connected with, or just one that you imagine. And just feel yourself now imagining that you're with that animal. And as we're looking at it, just take that love that's now flowing through your heart, that beautiful white light, and let it pour out into the animal. And then imagine yourself telling it something just in a picture. Maybe you're imagining yourself going for a walk with each other. Or maybe you're imagining that you're going to give it a treat or that it's going to come up and cuddle you. Just imagine that now. And then imagine the dog or the pet, whatever pet it is, responding to you. Feel that energy in every cell of your body. And then just clear that midge. And now move out into nature. Let's start maybe with a gentle animal that you would love to be in correspondence with. Maybe it's not a gentle animal. Maybe you just love tigers and you would love to be able to imagine yourself communicating with a tiger. Or maybe it's a deer or a bunny. And as you imagine this animal that you are longing to communicate with, feel the energy in your heart. Feel that love filling and expanding your heart so much. And if you need to, you can even draw on a love that you have in your human life. Holding a newborn baby, or being in the arms of your lover. Just feel love. And let that love pour into the animal, encasing you both in a beautiful bubble of light and love. And now once again, imagine a picture. Maybe it's a picture of peace, of joy that you are sending to the animal. And then imagine that animal responding with a picture, a thought that simply enters into your head. Feel the joy in every cell of your being for this connection. And then just let's take a moment to spread that light out into the world. And just imagine the feeling now, expansive feeling of just being connected to all of nature and the animal kingdom. Now it may be more abstract, just this feeling that you are welcomed back in to that network of energy, that ecosystem that we are, that symbiotic relationship. Just feel that connection. And then open your eyes. And as you do that, just keep that feeling and draw on that next time you see an animal in nature. Just take a moment to quiet yourself, to feel that love, to listen. Remember to listen, even before you send a picture or a message or speak out loud, which often scares them, but I do it anyway. If they're in enough of that bubble, they won't be scared. Enjoy, take that with you. Tell me about your experience and just maybe make a note of each time that you start to connect with the animals more and more. And we will be back again next week. Have an amazing week.